When Findus was little and disappeared, by Sven Nordquvist. Voice Wolf Krebs. Old Pettson sat doing the crossword, with Findus the cat on his knee. "Tell me about me disappearing," said Findus. "You haven't disappeared. You're sitting right here," said Pettson. "But I mean when I was little." "Ah, then. But you know that story already. I've told that so many times." "But tell me anyway." "Well, why not?" said Pettson, putting aside his crossword. Do you want the whole story or just when you disappear?" "The whole story," said the cat, and snuggled up happily. "The whole story, is it then? Here we go. There was once an old man called Pettson. He lived in his little house in the country and was as content as he could be. Well, almost. The trouble was that now and then he got lonely. If he really had to, he could talk with his neighbors, but they were busy with their own lives, of course. And he had his hens, too, for company, but they were so scatterbrained. The moment he started talking, they'd skedaddle off after a worm or something. Not ones for a long conversation. Chickens. After dark, when the hens went to roost, it often felt very empty and quiet in the little house. Not much fun, really. All on your own. One day, Betty Anderson from the neighboring farm dropped by to say hello. She brought buns with her, and Pettson served coffee under the lilac bush. He wasn't very talkative, and Betty Anderson could see he was a bit down in the dumps. "You need a wife to cheer you up," she said. "Ah," said Pettson. "No, I don't think so. Anyway, it is too late for all that. I'm too old. I'm used to being on my own, and I don't think I could manage a whole wife." "You don't even have a cat." "No," said Pettson, and thought a while. "Actually, cats aren't that much bother. Maybe I should get one." The next week, Betty Anderson returned with a cardboard box. "And this will keep you company," she said, giving the box to Pettson. "What is this?" The old man wondered and read the label. It says, "Findus green peas." These peas are squeaking." He opened the box, and there, on a piece of green stripy cloth, was a kitten. It eyed Pettson, and Peep squeaked. "Hello, Findus green peas," said Pettson. He felt the way you do when you draw open the curtains on a summer morning and the warm sunshine pours in. "I'm Pettson, and this is my kitchen. You can live here if you like. Do you want some coffee?" "He doesn't drink coffee," said Bet Anderson. "He needs milk. And he could probably eat something too." "Eat something?" repeated Pettson vaguely, wholly absorbed with the cat. He picked it up. It was small enough to fit in his hand. He poked the fluffy fur, and Findus clamped his claws around his finger and bit him. Well, he bites." Pettson smiled, and let him go on biting. Then, anxiously, he turned to old Miss Anderson. "Won't he miss his mother?" "For a few days, maybe. But he'll soon forget. You'll have to look after him. and be his new mother. Mother, murmured Pettson, happily watching the kitten bite him. Ouch! From then on, life was much easier for Pettson. The house was empty no longer. Findus stayed in the kitchen, and the old man shut the door behind him whenever he went outside to chop wood or potter about in the garden. He'll manage by himself for a little while, he thought. Cats get by on their own. Everybody knows that. But maybe I should go in and have a cup of coffee just to make sure. He drank lots more coffee these days. Pettson had someone to talk with, someone who didn't scuttle off clucking all the time. He talked as never before, about when he was young, about cows he had known, about how potatoes grow. He talked about anything that crossed his mind. He thought it a pity that Findus couldn't talk too, but just squeaked. Pettson thought that if he kept on talking, Findus might learn. Every evening he read to the cat, not exactly fairy tales, but more or less anything, a newspaper article about a new combine harvester, a magazine story about a nurse in love, or something about cocks and levers from a book of inventions. But Findus sat silently on his knee and listened and looked at the pictures. One day, when they were reading a magazine, Findus stepped onto the page and closely studied a picture of a clown in big stripy trousers. I want trousers like those, said Findus. Pettson gawped at him. The cat's first words. If that's what you want, I'll fix you a pair right away. He grinned happily as he reached for the sewing box. What a wonderful cat he had. Days passed and weeks. Findus got bigger. Now he could scamper about on his own. When they went a little further, say all the way to the tool shed, he would sit on Pettson's shoulder. He wanted to be with him everywhere. He chattered all the time. The once quiet house was alive with talking and running. Every morning, Findus woke up Pettson by jumping on him or pinching his nose or wrestling with his big toe. Gone were the days when the old man just wanted to pull the blanket over his head and vanish back to sleep. The very thought of living alone again made him sad. So he stopped thinking about it. And why think about it when the little cat in big trousers was jumping up and down on his stomach, calling, Wake up, Pettson! Let's play! But one morning, Pettson woke up knowing something was wrong. The old silence was back like before, when there was no cat there to bounce him awake. He jumped out of bed. Findus, where are you? He cried and searched under the blanket, under the pillow, under the bed, inside his shoes. He ran to the hall and then to the kitchen. Findus, Findus, are you there? He searched and called and everywhere. Barefoot he ran out to the tool shed and to the wood shed and then on to the hens. He yanked open the door, sending hens squawking in all directions. Have you seen Findus? He panted. The hens all cackled at once. Help, help, thief! A bull is coming! Where's Findus? Pettson got no trousers on. Quiet! Roared Pettson. The hens fell silent. Findus has disappeared. Has he been here? No, buck, 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 not today, clucked Prilly. Say, Aren't you the one who always taking our eggs? Pettson left without another word. Those hens hadn't a clue, and he himself had no idea that at that very moment, only yards away, a little cat was cowering in fear. Findus had gone exploring while Pettson was still asleep. In a corner beneath the attic stairs, he found a hole in the wall. He climbed in. He wasn't a bit scared of the dark and very curious. There wasn't much light inside, but his eyes quickly got used to it. Here and there, faint sunbeams shone through chinks in the wall, giving him enough light to see by. This was the world of the creepy crawlies and mice. This was where they lived and collected all the things Pettson had lost. It was dusty. Old wood, sawdust, and cobwebs. Findus crept through spaces behind the wall, under the floor, and through narrow passages. One moment his paws touched the floorboard, the next cool, moist earth. Round a corner it got lighter, and suddenly he was dazzled by the sunlight breaking in. He came out into tall grass beside a building. There was lots of junk and rusty things in the nettles. He didn't know where he was. He had never been here before. He heard a rustling and grunting in the grass. Something big was right behind him. He turned and saw a big furry hunk coming straight at him. All Findus' hairs stood upright with fright. He sprang into the junk heap like a shot and hid inside an old crate. Through the knothole he saw the ghastly creature. It was round and grey, with black and white stripes on his head. It snuffled in the grass and made harrumping sounds as if talking to itself. It must be looking for kittens to eat, thought Findus. He kept as quiet as he could and hoped that the monster wouldn't find him. Then he heard Pettson calling. He must be close by. But how could he get the old man's attention? He didn't dare call back, for then the monster might spot him. The minutes passed. The grey, furry hunk stayed just inches away from the crate. Findus started to cry. "There's an awful lot of crying going on here," said a voice. "That cat doesn't sound too happy," said another voice. It was two of those small muckle creatures who lived in the house. Findus had met them before. They could pop up anywhere, so it wasn't strange they were in his crate all of a sudden. "I daren't go out," sniffed Findus. "There's a big awful beast out there that wants to eat me up. Pettson will never find me." The two small figures jostled to peek through the knothole. "Oh, that monster looks dangerous, dangerous. It definitely wants to eat us. You'd better stay here." "I don't want to," squeaked Findus. "I want to go home to Pettson." "Why the fuss? You can live here just fine. Cheer up. I can tell you stories," said one of them. "Mine are better," said the other. Then they both began talking at once. "There was once a muggle who was extremely nice, big and strong too, and clever and handsome. He was probably the best ever. He was the best ever. He was called Plop. No, he was called Flurry." The story was about how a muckle found a cat in a crate, but it was mainly about how amazing the muckle was and hardly anything about the poor cat. Soon Findus had enough of their boasting. "I don't want to hear your boring stories. I want Pettson to come," he sniffed. "Can't you get and tell him?" "Telling him may be difficult. He probably can't speak muckless. He can't even see us." "No, he is a bit dull-witted, but we could give him a hint or two. Cheer up, we'll fix it. We'll flibber-jabble-dibble it." And they vanished. Findus felt much better. Surely somehow they would get Pettson to come, he thought. He sat by the knothole, keeping an eye on the monster, and waited for the old man to come. Pettson searched through the house once more. He was really worried now. He needed to search around the sheds and the garden and all the way to the road. Getting dressed, he couldn't find his shoes or socks. Just typicals. Screws, pens, tools, any and everything always disappeared, even though he knew exactly, more or less, where he'd left them. And always later he'd find them somewhere else. It was as if somebody was borrowing his things. He used to like thinking there was an elf living in the house. It didn't feel so lonely then. But he didn't need elves now. He had Findus. Maybe Findus had invented a new game. Hide the cat? Old man's buff? There was no use. No matter how much he scratched his head and tugged his beard, the shoes and socks were gone, just like Findus. He put on his boots and went outside to look around. And there were his shoes. They stood in front of the house as if about to head for the garden by themselves. And then he saw his socks laid out like arrows. They curled around the tool shed. He followed them, and there in the grass lay his braces, pointing to the back of the tool shed. In the junk heap behind the building, he could see a kitchen whisk hanging from a wire, a badger. And a badger, that old badger, it liked to sniff about at twilight sometimes. The first time Pettson saw it, he was a little bit cautious, as he'd heard that badgers might attack if they were frightened. But the badger apparently had the same idea about people and always ran away when you approached. "Hello, badger," said Pettson. It looked up and, seeing the old man, waddled away and soon vanished up the hill into the trees. "Findus," Pettson called, "are you here?" "Yes, here I am," came a voice from the junk pile. And there in the old soggy crate of rusty scrap and dry leaves was Findus, jumping for joy. Pettson lifted him up, and the cat clung to his neck. "Oh, Pettson," he squeaked, "you rescued me from that horrible monster. Take me home. I don't want to stay here. It is dangerous." "No, not dangerous at all," said Pettson. "There was only an old badger. He doesn't eat cats. If you don't annoy him, he is harmless, and it's really quite safe here. But best to learn all the hiding places so you'll know where to go if a fox or a silly dog comes by. You go and explore a bit. I'll sit here and wait." Findus looked horrified and clung on to Pettson's thumb, but the old man set the cat down on a rusty barrel. "There's nothing to be afraid of," he said. "I'm right here." Findus looked about hesitantly. Then he hopped over to an old wood saw, and then to a rusty bicycle. At last he dropped bravely to the ground. He crept around and explored, and now and then his head popped up somewhere and called, "Hello, Pettson." The old man sat there while the sun rose above the treetops, and watched as the cat found every single nook and cranny behind the tool shed and a good way up the hill besides. Then they went inside and had breakfast. Pettson asked about the shoes and socks that had shown him the way. "I didn't put them there," said Findus. "It was the muckles helping me. They are my friends. They live here too." "Ah," said Pettson, only a little surprised. "Now I'll never feel lonely again. What with neighbors, hens, and now you muckles. And this little cat, of course." Then they lived happily ever after, said Pettson, finishing the story. Findus beamed contentedly as he lay on Pettson's stomach. "That little cat, that's me," he said. "Yes, it is," said the old man. "It's lucky I found you before the badger ate you up." "Poor, he isn't dangerous. We are friends now. He is nice." "You can make friends with anyone, can you?" "Yep," said the cat, and thought for a moment. "But you are my best friend." "I definitely am," said the old man contentedly, and smiled.